Hello student, I am Professor Smita Jha from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I am here to discuss research methodology with a special reference to what are methods in research. You know, research methodology is a scientific, systematic process in which we give immense importance to method and methodology, but sometimes it appears that methods and methodology are interchangeable or more or less same. But this is not the fact. Let us see what are methods, because the very research design depends on methods, while methodology it is a process to explore that design. Now, research is the systematic asking of questions and congruent use of methods to learn answer to interesting, important questions. Whether or not your research has been purposeful in the past, you do research all the time. And also one thing I want to tell you, that any research is intertextual, that is to say that it is the partial fulfillment, and you take idea from other related works to hit the gap where some kind of exploration is needed. When you try to decide which clothing brand is most relevant by trying different brand, I mean, for example, I'm telling you, you are doing research while going to a shop, market. When you ask friends for recommendations about where to go to dinner, even you are doing research, R&D. When you experiment with different routes to find the best way to get to work, you are doing research. Why? That is the question. Because you want to know the best possible way, the best possible thing, the best possible restaurant. Because you want to try to know, it is a kind of try to explore various ideas. But such information gathering often takes particular routes, requires a specific tools, and is measured very differently. That is where research methods come in. If you buy, suppose again example, deodorant, perfume, you test it on yourself as a human subject. If you ask your friends for dinner reservations, you might send a group text that acts as a survey. See who weighs in and find out if their opinion match. When you drive a particular route, you are engaging with a particular site and measuring time. I'm giving you all example for choosing a method. It is not something that methods are fixed. You have to explore. Each of these ways of using particular tools to answer a question, you have a different kinds of research method. So, research methods are the tools, instruments, practices, processes. Insert whatever making metaphor you prefer that allow you to answer questions of interest and contribute to a critical conversation or a grouping of recognized ideas about that interest. The critical conversation comes out of our preliminary discovery about a particular question or set of questions. Discovery work known as rhetorical invention or a starting place for thinking, researching, and writing. Considered with this in mind, research methods train researchers on the available routes and pathways to generating new knowledge. Through writing and delivery circulation, researchers and the text, they produce both participate meaningfully in and also continue to shape research conversation. That is, what is known and what is knowable. This is very important. Often textbooks are intended to boil down ideas to their simplest parts. But we are purposeful in offering complexity, both because we know students are smart and can make sense of it, and because interesting research is complex. You won't initially end up with clean, clear, easy answers. But that is by design. Real research is messy and requires rethinking. It often also includes periods of not knowing, which can be uncomfortable. Get ready to take risk, to experiment, and to not find the answer on the first try. The preceding try this, ask you to recall that of identifying interesting questions, matching appropriate methods, considering possible answers, and reflecting on this process to improve it in future iterations is the process of conducting research. Research does not start with a thesis statement. It starts with a question. And though research is recursive, which means that you will move back and forth between various stages in your research and writing process, developing an effective question might in itself be the most important part of the research process. Because there is really no point in doing a research project if you already know the answer. Well, that is not exciting. In a way, it is boring. But it is how we are often taught to do research. We decide what we are going to argue. We look for those things that support that argument, and then we write up the thing that we knew from the outset. If that sounds familiar, we suggest that you scrap that plan. Instead, we suggest approaching research with an orientation of openness, ready and willing to be surprised to change your mind, of course. You never approach research in a vacuum. You probably have ideas about whatever it is that you are working on. You probably have thoughts about what the answers are to your research questions, and that is as it should be. But that statement or belief should not be where you start. We often think about research as knowing, but it's really about the making of knowledge, the movement from not knowing to beginning to know, figuring things out, trying to solve or sort out tricky problems. At the end of an effective research project, we usually have more questions than we started with. Surely, we answer the initial question if all goes well. But that process of building knowledge usually leads to more questions and helps us recognize what we don't know. As you familiarize yourself with an issue and the way scholars have talked about it, take note of the specific ways they talk about the issue and consider why that is. This is how you develop a rhetorical awareness of the ways in which research is constructed. So, when you read like a researcher. Consider both what is said about an issue and how it is said, identifying the rhetorical situation of the piece of writing. This includes the context in which it is written, the audience for whom it is written, and its purpose. The decisions you make in developing an effective research question, matching it to an approaching research method, and then responsibly analyzing the implications of your findings. Research design are especially important because research is subjective. Subjectivity is often seen as negative and is frequently leveled as a reason to mistrust a decision or judgment, as in you are just being subjective. But all research is subjective. All research is communication, a kind of exchange of ideas. Of course, not all scholars and fields believe this. But let us try to convince you because it is important. This belief is central to conducting ethical research. There is no pure objectivity when it comes to research. Research is conducted by people, all of whom have different ideas about effective research, but researchers abide by a code of ethics that holds them to standards that help them maintain safety and develop meaningful research. Even quantitative research, even computer algorithms that identify trends, all of the methods associated with developing this data are engineered by people and are thus subjective. And this is a good thing. What we have described thus Far is a rhetorical approach to the research process. Derived from classical Greek influences, the five ancient canons of rhetoric include invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. In the context of writing and research, these long established foundational concepts also go by other names such as pre writing, organization, mechanics, and grammar, process, and circulation of a research product. We want to keep in mind these qualities of effective communication throughout the chapter, but we will spend significant time with invention and delivery canons that we think often get pushed aside or treated as an afterthought in many approaches to research and research based writing, and that we pay particular attention to in this context. Research methods are different from research methodologies because they are the ways in which, as a researcher, you will collect the data, resources, material for your research project. The best method for your project largely depends on your topic, the type of data you will need, and the people or items from which you will be collecting data. Now, we can discuss some of the method like qualitative, quantitative, and mixed research method. Research design is a plan to answer your research question. A research method is a strategy that we have to keep in mind, use to implement that plan. Research design and methods are different but closely related because good research design ensures that the data, materials, sources you obtain will help you answer your research question more effectively. It depends on your research goal. It depends on what subjects and who you want to study. Let us say you are interested in studying what makes people happy, or why some students are more conscious about recycling on campus. To answer these questions, you need to make a decision about how to collect your data or material. Most frequently used methods including like observation, participants observation, surveys, interviews, focus groups, experiments, secondary data analysis, archival study, mixed method, combination of some of the above. Now, if we talk of methods and methodology, we should know that the confusion between methodology and method in research is a common occurrence, especially with the term sometimes being used interchangeably. Methods and methodology in the context of research refer to two related but different things. Method is the technique used in gathering evidence. Methodology, on the other hand, is the underlying theory and analysis of how a research does or should proceed. You can say, in a way, theoretical framework. Similarly, methodology as a set of principles and ideas that inform the design of a research study. Meanwhile, methods are practical procedures used to generate and analyze data. One particular method could be better suited to your research goal than others because the data you collect from different methods will be different in quality and quantity. For example, surveys are usually designed to produce relatively short answers rather than the extensive responses expected in qualitative interviews. Time for resource data material collection and analysis is something you want to consider. An observation or interview method, so-called qualitative approach, helps you collect richer information, but it takes time. Using a survey helps you collect more data quickly, yet it may lack details. So, you as a researcher will need to consider the time you have for research and the balance between strengths and weaknesses associated with each method, whether it is qualitative or quantitative or mixed method. Research methods are the strategies, processes, or techniques utilized in the collection of sources, data, or evidence for analysis in order to uncover new information or create better understanding of a topic. And we all know that there are different types of research methods. using different tool, because method require different tool. And methodology, we talk about methodology, plays indeed a crucial role in the academic and professional fields, providing a structured processes to gather, analyze, and interpret data. This methodology is foundational for developing accurate, reliable, and valid conclusions, especially in a diverse country like India, where multiple disciplines and industries apply it rigorously. As we explore the various facets of research methodology, we will delve into its definition, types, process, objectives, and the scope. And we should to know the various dimensions of research methods and methodology. So, research methods are the ways of gathering, analyzing data to answer research questions. And research questions are very important in the proceedings of research. Different methods are suited to different types of research questions and situations. So when we talk of factors to consider when choosing a method, research question first come. This is the type of question you want to answer. Questions are very important. How to frame questions. Resources that again, includes time, budget, personal available. Ethics, very important if we talk of method. Whether the methods raises ethical concern. Yes, and the entire process is ethical. Data availability. This is also very important part of choosing method, whether the data is readily available or needs to be collected. How much time you are going to devote. Researcher expertise, which include the skills and the experience of the research team. Generalizability, whether you want to generalize the result to a larger population. And then bias, potential sources of bias and how they might impact the results. So research methods are processes used to collect data. You can use this data to analyze current methods or procedures and to find additional information on a topic. Professionals use research methods while studying medicine, human behavior, other scholarly topics, cultural aspects, sociological aspects. There are two main categories. And according under this only, qualitative, quantitative, we have to move as methodical part of research. We all know that qualitative research method, which focus on collecting and analyzing non-numerical data. And these methods are particularly useful when exploring complex phenomena, understanding human experiences, or developing new theories. Qualitative research often involves in-depth investigations of small samples, aiming to provide rich, detailed descriptions of the subject under study. Common qualitative research methods include interviews, focus groups, and participants' observation. These approaches allow researchers to gather detailed information about people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. For example, a researcher studying workplace culture might conduct in-depth interviews with employees to understand their experiences and perception. Qualitative data analysis often involves identifying themes and patterns in the collected information. Textual. This process can be time consuming but offers valuable insight into complex social issues that may be difficult to quantify. And if we talk of quantitative research method, on the other hand, deal with numerical data and statistical analysis. These methods are used when researchers want to measure variables, test hypotheses, or identify relationships between different factors. Quantitative research typically involves larger sample sizes and aims to produce generalizable results. Common quantitative research methods include surveys, experiments, statistical analysis of existing data. What type of data to collect? This depends on the method. Who to collect it from? The sampling strategy. How to collect it? The data collection method. How to analyze it? The analysis method. For instance, a researcher studying the effectiveness of a new teaching method might experiment by comparing test scores between group of the students taught with different methods. Quantitative data analysis often involves statistical techniques to identify trends, correlations, or significant differences between groups. This approach allows researchers to draw conclusions that can be applied to larger population. So in a thesis, dissertation, academic journal article, or other formal pieces of research, there are often details of how the researcher approached the study and the methods and techniques they used. If you are designing a research study, then it may be helpful to understand what research methodology is and the selection of techniques and tools available to you. And if we talk of mixed method research, combines elements of both qualitative quantitative approaches. This is also very good. This type of research recognizes that each method has its strengths and limitations, and by combining them, researchers can gain more comprehensive understanding of the topic under study. In mixed method research, qualitative and quantitative data are collected and analyzed separately, then integrated to provide a fuller picture. Mixed method research can be particularly valuable when dealing with complex research questions that cannot be fully answered by either qualitative or quantitative methods alone. It allows researchers to capitalize on the strengths of both approaches while minimizing their weaknesses. By understanding these different types of research methods, researchers can choose the most appropriate approach for their specific research questions and goals. Each method offers unique insights and can contribute valuable knowledge to various fields of study. Even if we talk of experiment, this is a research method that incorporates scientific procedures to test a hypothesis, discover new insights, or demonstrate established facts. A researcher typically observes an event and creates a hypothesis. This hypothesis is essentially a statement depicting what happens when certain variables interact. For example, the surface temperature lowers when clouds obstruct direct sunlight. Now, this research method can apply to almost any industry, any business, because it doesn't rely on specific resources or test subjects. A survey relies on human input, but an experiment can involve varying inputs depending on the topic. So, an experiment can either be a natural, field, or controlled experiment. A natural experiment involves making an observation, forming a hypothesis, and collecting data while controlling no variables. Researchers often conduct controlled experiments in a laboratory. They usually test different control groups, one with controlled variables and the other with no controlled variables. A field experiment is either a natural or controlled experiment, but researchers conduct field experiments in real-world setting rather than in a laboratory. And if we talk of surveys, it involves the collection of data through a questionnaire. A questionnaire is a set of questions provided to individuals to answer. Surveys are not always anonymous, but researchers might make them anonymous to encourage participants to provide truthful answers. A survey can be an excellent method for collecting cross-referencing and analyzing data between specific demographics. The question in a survey can technically refer to any topic, making it a versatile research method for analyzing societal issues. The questions may be complex, though researchers might include simple questions to minimize human error in the data. Depending on the survey's purpose, researchers typically convert the answers into quantitative data, meaning it has a numerical value. The researchers then analyze the quantitative data to establish links and relationships between the survey results. For example, a survey may ask individuals about their favorite color and their age. From the results, a research might establish a relationship that shows younger individuals prefer a color spectrum different from seniors. It's usually beneficial to understand that a survey might not provide as accurate data as a controlled experiment because of human error. So, if we talk of observational research, which is similar to a field experiment, but an observational study doesn't intervene or test variables. Observational research observes a phenomenon, event, or entity to reach an inference. The researcher doesn't manipulate or test variables to identify relationships. Observational research is often a part of other research methods involving more extensive analytical processes. For example, researchers conducting experiments may conduct an observational study to develop hypotheses. The observational research method is typically highly versatile. This is because a researcher can technically observe anything from a group of mammals to the formation of stars. It's usually most appropriate when observing behavior and action in a subject's natural environment. For example, researchers might conduct an observational study to determine how a specific animal hunts in the wild. Rather than experimenting, the researchers observe to ensure their presence doesn't disrupt the predator's natural processes. They may also avoid altering variables as this may cause an unnatural environment, lowering the accuracy of data collected. And if we talk of case studies, one of the very important methods is a research method that comprises procedures similar to interviews and observations. If a researcher conducts a case study, they are researching a particular event, phenomenon, individual, or group. The case usually has established hypotheses, observations, and existing research material. Case studies usually have pre-existing information compared to other research methods such as experiments and observations. This means a case study's purpose is usually to provide more understanding of a topic rather than test a hypothesis. It seeks to understand why something happened rather than what might happen. You might define case studies as research on topics that transpired in the past. For example, an experiment may test the hypothesis of women suffering in a society. A case study on the same subject might involve researcher examining an individual's family background. Case studies might not be the most effective approach to proving hypothesis, but they can be an excellent method when expanding contextual information about real-world subjects. A notable difference between case studies and other research methods is that case studies produce qualitative data rather than quantitative. Interviews and focus groups, if we talk as part of method, are like surveys, except they typically involve fewer participants. The interview research method involves researchers asking individuals or a small group specific questions about a topic. These questions are usually more complex and encourage more in-depth answer than a survey. The results from interviews are typically qualitative. For example, a researcher may ask many questions about an individual's working environment, asking them to describe their feelings and discuss behaviors. A survey might ask the participant to rank their experience in their workplace based on a numerical response. A focus group is essentially a group interviews, though it has slight differences. Researchers usually choose a specific participants to engage in a group discussion when conducting focus group. A researcher may moderate the discussion or include a third-party moderator. Unlike interviews, the researchers encourage discussion between participants. So participants may answer questions and then discuss those answers amongst the group. Focus groups and interviews may seek to gain data from selected individuals rather than broad demographies. This research method is usually more appropriate for specific research topics rather than topics targeting societal issues. If we talk of Secondary data analysis, this research approach usually has limitations in its scope and versatility. This is because it involves the research that already exists. When conducting secondary data analysis, researchers typically examine case studies, experiments, surveys already conducted. Now, this research approach can have several benefits such as cost and time effectiveness. For example, researchers rarely collect and analyze raw data, which can incur substantial cost and consume extensive time. So, researchers utilize secondary data analysis to answer unique questions different from the questions answered in the prior research. For example, a researcher wants to answer the question, why do individuals from addictions to social media? The researcher might conduct secondary data analysis by examining another researcher's findings. These findings relate but answer the question, what are the effects of social media on behavioral tendencies? The data is not specific, but it relates to the topic and may provide useful information. Thus, research methods are systematic approaches used to collect, analyze, and interpret data in scientific investigations. They encompass a variety of techniques, including surveys, experiments, interviews, and observations, each designed to address specific types of research questions. These methods provide the foundation for rigorous academic inquiry, allowing researchers to explore phenomenon, test hypotheses, and draw reliable conclusion across diverse fields of study. Now, here I would like to wrap up the discussion before moving to methodology in research. Let us meet in the next lecture, which is on methodology. Till then, thank you.